Have you ever had one of those days where nothing has technically gone wrong, but you still feel like you're already behind? You wake up, and before you even put your feet on the floor, your mind starts going, what do I need to do today? What did I forget? Who do I need to call back? What should I have done yesterday? What am I supposed to make for dinner? Why didn't I go to bed earlier? You see something that makes you anxious. Maybe you should have responded to, makes you feel like everyone else has their life more together than you do. And it's only been 10 minutes. You haven't eaten anything. You haven't had a chance to think. You may not even know what you need yet. But already the day feels like it's happening to you. You're reacting. You're putting out little fires. You're trying to remember everything at once. And by the end of the day, you may be exhausted without feeling like you got much done. Now, I'm not saying that every day has to be planned out from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to bed. This isn't going to be one of those conversations where I tell you that if you just wake up at 5 in the morning, you drink the right smoothie, you make a perfect list, you organize your socks by color, and your whole life will magically fall into place. That's not real life. Life is messy. Things happen. Kids get sick. Work runs late. Your car decides to be creative in what problems it's going to have today. You get an unexpected phone call. You wake up anxious. But there's a difference between life being unpredictable and life feeling like you have nothing steady to hold on to. That's where structure can help. Not structure as a prison and not structure as another thing to fail at. We don't want structure like that. It's not a way to prove you're disciplined, productive, or somehow better than everybody else. I'm talking about structure as a support for your life, something that helps you know what comes next, something that gives your mind a break from having to make every decision from scratch. Something that helps you to take care of yourself, even on the days when motivation isn't exactly showing up to help. Sometimes structure isn't about controlling your life. Sometimes it's about giving yourself a little steadiness inside of life that you can't fully control. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Why structure helps us psychologically. Why routine can make a difference in the way that we feel. Why having a few things that we can count on can help us feel a lot less overwhelmed, and how to create a structure in a way that supports you instead of making you feel like you're always failing. So welcome back to the podcast. I'm Lee Perry. I am the Pirate Therapist. And now let's talk about structure. I'm glad you're here. Today we're talking about structure, routine, rhythms, habits, schedules, and the small things we do repeatedly that help hold our days together. And I want to start by saying structure doesn't have to look impressive. It doesn't have to look like you have a color-coded calendar and a perfectly organized kitchen or a morning ritual that belongs on a productivity video. For some people, structure looks like getting up around the same time every day. For somebody else, it might be taking medications with their breakfast. It could be setting out clothes for tomorrow before bed. It might take 10 minutes after work to sit quietly before you start making dinner or writing down 3 things that you need to give your attention to that day. It could be doing just one small thing that reminds you that I'm still here and I need to take care of myself. That's what this episode is really about. I'm not saying you need to build a perfect life, just building a life that has enough steadiness to support, because psychologically, predictability can be very helpful. When we have a few regular rhythms in place, our minds don't have to work quite as hard to figure out what to expect next. A routine can reduce some of the mental load that comes from constantly making decisions, and it can offer a sense of stability where the rest of life feels uncertain. And that's especially important when we've been stressed, whether we're anxious or depressed, just feeling overwhelmed. When we're struggling, motivation can be unreliable. We might know what would help us. Do we need sleep? Do we need to eat something? Do we need to just get up and move our bodies around and loosen our joints up? Do we need to take a shower? But knowing what would help and having the energy to do it aren't always the same thing. This is where structure can step in. It can help us to do the next small thing, even when we don't feel like doing it. It can help give us a place to begin when everything feels like it's just too much. That's part of the idea behind behavioral activation, an evidence-based approach for depression that helps people reconnect with a meaningful and rewarding activity rather than waiting for motivation to arrive before we do anything. When depression leads people to withdraw from routines and other sources of reward, that withdrawal can deepen our depressed mood. Planned activity is one way that we can use to interrupt that cycle. I also want to talk about the difference between structure and rigidity. Structure can be helpful, But structure can also become another way to beat ourselves up if we turn it into an impossible standard. If you miss one morning's walk, does that mean that routine has failed you? If you oversleep, does that mean you've ruined your day? If your schedule gets knocked around because life happened, it doesn't mean you've lost all your progress. We need a structure that should support you. It shouldn't shame you. It should help you to come back to yourself. It shouldn't make you feel like you're only doing well when you can follow the structure perfectly. So today we're going to talk about why structure helps our minds and bodies and why life can feel so much harder when we don't have that routine or rhythm, and how we can create simple behavioral anchors that are realistic for the life that we actually have. You don't need to restructure your whole life by tomorrow. You don't need a perfect planner. You don't need to become someone else. You may just need one or two things that you can come back to when everything else feels like it's moving too fast. So drop anchor and settle in. Let's talk about why a little structure can sometimes give us a whole lot more room to breathe. And first of all, structure is not a prison. When people hear the word structure, they can have pretty strong reactions to it. Some people hear structure and they immediately think, oh, well, that sounds helpful. But a lot of people hear structure and think, oh, that sounds miserable. And depending on the day, both have been true for me. Some people picture waking up before sunrise because some self-proclaimed life coach expert told them that they should. They picture a calendar that's packed from morning to night. They're envisioning rules, lists, alarms. They feel anxious, like there's no room to breathe. You can't change your mind. There's no room for a bad day. If you've ever had a routine used against you, or if you grew up in a circumstance where somebody else controlled every part of your life, structure probably doesn't feel all that comforting to you at all. It probably feels more restrictive. Probably feels like somebody's trying to tell you what you're allowed to do and when and how you're allowed to do it. So let me clear something up right now at the beginning. Structure is not supposed to be a prison. It isn't supposed to control every minute of your day. It's not supposed to turn you into a machine, and it most certainly isn't supposed to become one more thing that you use to prove to yourself that you're failing at life. Structure is supposed to support you. That's the difference. A prison is going to tell you what you must do, and it punishes you when you don't do it exactly right. And support, which is what we want this structure to be, would help you get through this day. Or support says what would help you get through this day with a little less stress. A prison says if you miss your morning routine, you've just ruined the day. But supportive structure says, okay, that didn't happen today. What's the next small thing that you can come back to and get back on track? That's the kind of structure I'm talking about. Structure isn't about squeezing more productivity out of yourself. It's about creating a little more predictability. We want a kind of rhythm, a few parts of your day that you don't have to keep deciding over and over again. Because when life already feels complicated, having to decide everything from scratch is often very exhausting. What time should I get up? What should I eat? Should I go to work now or should I rest now? Should I answer that email or do the laundry or make dinner or just sit here for 5 minutes before my brain feels like it's okay to be done for the day? See, none of these decisions are necessarily huge by themselves, but when you have enough of them, they pile up. And by the time you get to the bigger things, you might already be mentally worn out. Structure can help take some of that weight off, not by making every choice for you, but by giving you a starting place. It can be something as simple as saying, most mornings, I'm going to eat something before I start scrolling. Or when I get home from work, I'm going to take 10 minutes and just sit down before I start worrying about dinner and all of my to-do list for the evening. That's not being controlled. It's taking care of your future self. I think a lot of us need to hear that. Taking care of ourselves doesn't have to look impressive to others. It doesn't have to look like something that you want to post online. It doesn't have to be perfectly planned or perfectly consistent. Sometimes just taking care of yourself is just creating one small moment in the day where you don't have to restart from zero. Now, there's another reason structure can get a bad reputation. A lot of people have tried routines before and they didn't stick. And maybe you decided that you were going to get up early every day. Maybe you bought a planner or you made a list. Maybe you started strong for a few days and then life did what life does and it happened to you. You got sick or work got busy. Maybe your kids needed something or you just had a bad mental health day. Perhaps you stayed up too late and then you missed one day and then another, and pretty soon the routine felt completely abandoned. Then we start telling ourselves things like, oh, well, I just don't have enough discipline, or I'm terrible at routines. But look, missing your routine doesn't mean you failed. It means you're living a life where things happen. That's all. A routine that only works when life is calm and predictable and easy, it isn't a very useful routine. Real structure has to come for real life. It needs some flexibility. It has to have room for sick days. It has to have room for kids and work and appointments. There will be setbacks and bad nights of sleep. That shouldn't mean we give up every time something changes. It means we have to learn how to adjust. That's where flexibility comes in. A flexible structure tells us that this is what I usually do. And rigid structure says, this is the only way I can do this. A flexible structure is going to tell us that I missed my walk this morning. Maybe I can take 10 minutes walk at lunch. A rigid structure is going to say I missed my walk, so the whole day is just shot. There's a difference between these things. One of those ways of thinking gives you somewhere to come back to, and the other gives you one more reason to beat yourself up. Structure isn't supposed to become one more weapon that you're going to use against yourself. It's supposed to be an anchor, something you can come back to, something that helps us feel better and a little steadier when the rest of life feels like it's just moving around. Now, research on daily routines makes this point pretty clearly. Maintaining helpful routines can support resilience during stressful periods, but the ability to adjust those routines when circumstances change, that's important too. Psychological flexibility, or adapting our approach while staying connected to what's important, is generally linked to better adjustment than rigidly clinging to one coping strategy no matter what is happening. It makes sense when you think about it. Life changes. Your needs change. Your energy changes. And what worked for you last year may not work for you now. What worked on Tuesday may not work on Saturday. And what helps you when you're feeling okay may not be enough when you're burned out, depressed, anxious, or going through some kind of major change. So the question isn't, can I follow this routine exactly? The question is, does this routine support me and is it flexible? Does it help me feel more grounded? Does it help me to meet my needs and still accomplish things? Does it make my life just a little easier to manage? Or does it mostly make me feel pressured, guilty, and like I'm failing? If your routine is making you miserable, it might not be that you need more discipline. It might be that you just need more compassion. Or maybe you just need to make your routine a little smaller. This may be shocking to some, but it may need to be that your structure needs to be a little more realistic. It might need to fit in the life that you have instead of the life that you think you're supposed to have. Let me give you an example. Imagine somebody decides they're going to start the day with a new morning routine. They're going to wake up an hour earlier. They're going to run a marathon. They're going to meditate and journal and then make a healthy breakfast, review their goals, and be completely ready for the day before anybody else in the house is even awake. That sounds great on paper, but if they're already going to bed too late, they're waking up several times during the night, they're working long hours, and they're trying to take care of other people, that routine may not be as supportive as you need. It may just be one more impossible demand. A more helpful structure might be a lot smaller, like setting clothes out the night before, or drinking a glass of water in the morning and giving yourself a second to breathe before you check your work emails. It could be just sitting quietly for 2 minutes before your day starts. And that doesn't look very impressive, but if it helps you to begin your day with a little less chaos, then it's doing what structure is supposed to do. It's supporting you. Here's another example. You have a day where you plan to clean the house, answer emails, run errands, and make a good dinner. Then you get a text from your mother saying that she went to war against an army of wasps invading her home, but doesn't want to call an exterminator. And that throws everything off. Or something at work happens and takes all your energy. A rigid mindset is going to tell you that I didn't get the day that I planned, so I might as well do nothing. And if your structure is flexible, it's going to tell you something different. It's going to say, well, today changed. What's one thing I can still do that would help me feel more stable in this moment? Do you need to eat something? When was the last time you ate? Do you need to take a shower? How long has it been? Maybe you just answer one important email, or maybe you just do the dishes before you go to bed. Now, I want to say something here. You get to have a say in the structure of your life. Now, that is critical. It's really important. As the only thing we truly have control of is ourselves and our own choices, make sure you stay at the helm of your ship and keep control over the boundaries and the choices that you set and you make. Structure works better when it's something that you choose because it helps you, not something you're forcing yourself to do because you think you should be more like somebody else. Don't do that. That's normal. And if you If you've been following me for any amount of time, you'll know that normal is a bad word. Normal is just somebody else's idea of who we should be. There's a big difference between saying, I have to work out at 5 every morning because that's what a successful person does, and saying, I feel better when I move around and loosen up my joints. So I'm going to find time that actually works for my life. There's a difference between saying I have to meal prep everything because I'm supposed to be organized and saying I get stressed when I don't know what I'm going to eat. So I'm going to just make one or two things easier for myself this week. One comes from pressure. The other comes from self-care. When structure comes from care, it's more likely to feel like support instead of control. Having a real sense of choice and ownership is an important part of well-being. Research on autonomy, supportive environments links them with greater vitality and quality of life, as well as lower anxiety and depression and negative affect. So I want you to think about the structure in your life a little bit differently. Don't think of it as a cage or as a perfect schedule. It's not a test that you have to pass. Think of it as a few supports you put in place because you deserve a life that doesn't require you to be in survival mode all the time. Think of it like a handrail. You won't need it every second, but when you're tired or distracted or trying to make your way through a difficult day, it can really help keep you steady. Structure is not a prison. It's a way of making life a little more livable. A kind of structure that doesn't demand perfection. It gives you a place to come back from when something in life pulls you off course. So I want to talk to you about rhythm, okay? And when I say rhythm, I'm not talking about the kind of person who wakes up at exactly 5:14 every morning, drinks a green smoothie at 5:17, and somehow has a color-coded plan for the next 6 months. If that works for you, great. But for the rest of us, rhythm is generally a lot simpler than that. Rhythm is just knowing that some things happen with enough regularity that your mind and your body don't have to keep asking what's coming next. It's waking up around the same time most days and having a general time when you eat. It's about having some kind of way you move from work mode to home mode. It's having a place in the day where you can rest or connect to somebody else. It's taking your meds. It could be going outside and just feeling the sun on your face or taking a few breaths before you jump into the next thing. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's probably not going to be. In this instance, perfect is subjective, and what's perfect for you may not be perfect for me. Remember, your routine doesn't have to happen at the exact same time every day. When there's some rhythm, it gives your mind a little less to manage, because our minds are doing a lot all day long. We're making decisions while trying to remember everything. We're managing our work, our social interactions. We're trying to keep track of work, jobs, and details, family, money, appointments, relationships, responsibilities. And that's not counting whatever unexpected thing life is going to throw at us that day. Sometimes the unexpected thing is a real emergency. It's a problem you have to deal with. Sometimes it's a text from a family member that derails our train of thought and immediately makes us think, great, what happened now? Either way, our minds are constantly trying to figure out what needs our attention. So when there's no regular rhythms in place, every small decision can start to feel bigger than it really is. What should I do first? Do I eat now or keep working? Should I respond to that message? Should I go to bed? Should I start the laundry, make dinner, return phone calls, or stare at the phone and doom scroll for an hour and 20 minutes because I'm too tired to decide? None of those questions make you lazy. Those questions don't mean that you're bad at life. It just means that you may have a lot of decisions coming at you without enough space to recover in between those decisions. And that's where rhythm can help. It doesn't remove every decision or make life easy, but it can take a few choices off of your plate. If you already know that you usually eat something around noon, you don't have to negotiate with yourself all morning about whether or not you deserve lunch or whether you should keep working. If you have a general wind down routine at night, you don't have to wait until you're completely exhausted before you start wondering why you can't fall asleep. If you have one or two small anchors in your day, you'll have something to come back to, something to help ground you when everything else gets loud. Now, I think it's important, more than we might want to give it credit for, because rhythm isn't just about productivity, it's about safety. Our minds and bodies pay attention to patterns. When life feels unpredictable, the nervous system can stay on high alert. It feels like you're constantly waiting for the next problem, the next phone call, the next bill, the next thing somebody needs from you and the next thing you forgot. When you've lived through a lot of unpredictability and chaos and trauma and stress, your mind may get very good at scanning for what could go wrong next. That is exhausting. A small routine won't erase everything you've been through, and it's not going to make the hard parts in your life just disappear. But it can send you a quiet message to your brain and your body. This is what's going to happen next. You don't have to solve everything right now. There's still time to eat and rest. There's still time to ground and to come back to yourself. And that kind of predictability can help us to feel a little more grounded, a little more stable. There's also a physical side to this. Our bodies have rhythms too. You've probably heard people talk about the body's internal clock or circadian rhythms. That's the system that helps regulate things like sleep and wakefulness, hormones, temperature, and energy across the day. Now, we don't need to turn this into a science class, but it's helpful to know that our bodies do better when they get some regular signals. It could be light in the morning or darkness at night, a general rhythm around sleeping and waking, or movement and rest. Those kinds of patterns help our bodies understand what time it is and what they're supposed to be doing. Now, research shows that sleep and circadian rhythms have a two-way relationship with mood. Disrupted rhythms are associated with mood symptoms, and disruptions like jet lag, night shift work, or bright artificial light at night can worsen mood symptoms for some people who are vulnerable. Regular daily timing around things like waking and meals or school, social interaction, and even bedtime is one reason routines can help stabilize a person's body clock. Again, doesn't mean you have to become rigid. We still need flexibility. If you work nights or have young kids or live with chronic pain, maybe you're working rotating shifts, or you just have a life where the schedule changes constantly. You may not be able to create the same kind of routine that somebody else can, and that's okay. This isn't about following somebody else's version of a healthy life. It's about looking at your life and asking, where can I create a little more peaceful rhythm? It's not a perfect bedtime, but it's one thing you do before sleep that tells your mind the day is starting to slow down. It's not eating at the same time every day, but it's keeping something easy around so you don't have to go all day without food if life gets busy. Maybe it's not about a morning workout, but it's stepping outside for a few minutes after you wake up and just getting some fresh air and feeling the sunshine on your face. We don't always notice how much we need them until we don't have them. Think about a time in your life when everything changed. Maybe you changed jobs, or you moved, or you went through a breakup and some kind of loss or illness, and perhaps where your mental health was really struggling. When big change happens, it's often not just the big thing that affects us. It's the way the big thing disrupts all the little things. Suddenly, you're sleeping at different times, you're eating differently, you are not seeing the same people socially. Maybe you don't have the same reasons to get out of bed anymore, or you don't know what the day is supposed to look like anymore. Your mind can start to feel like it's floating. That isn't because you're weak, it's because the routines that used to hold parts of your life together have changed. Daily routine disruptions have been linked with greater psychiatric symptoms in research, including depressive symptoms. That doesn't mean disrupted routine causes every mental health struggle, and it certainly doesn't mean structure alone is treatment, but it does mean that rebuilding a few steady rhythms after a disruption can be a practical part of taking care of yourself. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone who has been working from home for a while. At first, it sounds great. No commute, no getting dressed up. You can work in comfortable clothes and nobody knows if you've had the same cereal bowl sitting on your desk for 3 days. Ew. But after a while, the line starts to blur. You wake up, you check your work before you've eaten, you answer messages while you're still in bed, you work through lunch because no one around to remind you that it's lunchtime, and then suddenly it's evening. You're still at the computer and you can't figure out why you feel like you've been working all day, but like you never really started. The problem may not be that working from home is bad. The problem may be that there's no clear rhythm between waking up, working, resting, eating, and ending the day. So maybe the answer isn't a perfect schedule. It could be that it's just one small transition. You get dressed before opening work. You step outside for a couple of minutes before you start. You take a lunch break, a real lunch break, even if it's just long enough to stay away from the screen for a few minutes. And when the workday ends, you close your computer and do one small thing that tells you that the workday is done for now. During the quarantine for COVID, I had many clients that had issues separating work and home, and pretty much everybody was working from home. What helped them a lot was establishing a routine that helped differentiate between work and home. One client I had would get dressed up for work, even though he was working from home. And then at the end of his work day, he would change his clothes into something relaxing. And that helped separate psychologically for him work and home. Another client would get in his car and drive around the block before coming back home to go to work, and then to do the same thing when he was finished with his workday. The kind of rhythm that gives the mind a boundary. It helps you move from one part of life into another instead of carrying everything at the same time. Now, here's another example. You're going through a rough period emotionally. You're anxious, you're depressed, maybe burned out. You're just tired of being tired. And then when you feel that way, it can be really hard to do basic things. You may not feel motivated to eat, or you may not feel like showering. You might just stay in bed longer than you want to because getting up feels like it's just too much today. Now, I want to be careful here. This isn't about shaming anybody. When somebody's struggling, basic tasks can become genuinely hard. But routine can sometimes give us a gentle place to come back to start. Maybe your structure is not get your whole life together today. Maybe your structure is going to look like I'm going to sit up, I'm going to put my feet on the floor, and I'm going to drink some water. Or I'm going to go stand outside for a couple of minutes and just feel the daylight. Those things may sound small, but when your mind is overwhelmed, small is often where we need to start. You don't need to fix everything at once. You just need the next thing. A rhythm to your day can give you that next thing. And that's why our minds need that rhythm. We're not machines. We don't need to become perfectly organized. We don't need a perfectly planned day. Our minds need rhythm because life asks a lot of us. Because the mental cost of decisions add up. Uncertainty wears us down. Our bodies need signals that it's time to wake up or eat or rest. It gives us signals when we need to connect with the world. When life feels like it's pulling us in 10,000 different directions, a few small rhythms can help remind us that we're still allowed to come back to ourselves and ground ourselves. You don't necessarily need to overhaul your life. You don't need to make a schedule so complicated that you need a schedule to follow the schedule. You might just need one or two things that happen often enough to say, this is where I start, this is where I stop, and I ground myself. That's rhythm. A little rhythm can help us feel less like we're being thrown around by the waves and a little more like we've got our hands at the helm. Now, what happens when life has no rails? Then there are times when structure feels hard because life has knocked the deck out from under us. Maybe you've been there. You've had a rhythm. You knew what your days usually look like. You knew when you got up, where you were going. You knew when you were going to go back home. You knew who you're going to talk to. You had some idea of what tomorrow was going to bring. And then something changed. You lost your job, or maybe a relationship ended, or somebody you care about got sick. Did you become a caregiver unexpectedly? Did you have a child? Did you have a depressive episode and your mental health just got worse? Maybe the world around you got more expensive and more unpredictable, and now you're doing math every time you head to the grocery store and walk in, trying to see if that math can add up to what you need versus what you have. Maybe nothing happened all at once. Life just slowly got more complicated, more responsibilities, more demands, more people needing things from you. And then one day you look around and you realize, I don't have a routine anymore. You're just responding to whatever comes flying at you next. And that's what I mean when I say life has no rails. It's like you're on a train, but the tracks disappeared somehow, somewhere behind you. You're still moving, you're still trying. You might even look like you're functioning from the outside, but inside, you're not really sure what direction you're going. You're hoping that you don't crash into something. And look, when life gets like that, creating structure can be really hard. It's not because you're lazy and lack discipline. It's hard because uncertainty takes energy. And when you don't know what's coming next, your mind works overtime. Your nervous system is always on high alert, and your brain tries to prepare you for every possible outcome. It's the constantly scanning. What if this happens? What if I forgot something? What if I can't handle it? What if things get worse? What if I make things worse? That kind of uncertainty can leave you exhausted before you've even done anything. Research on anxiety and uncertainty makes things pretty clear. When we don't know whether something difficult is coming, our minds often start paying more attention to possible threats, trying to predict the future and then preparing for outcomes that we may not be able to control. That doesn't mean uncertainty is dangerous by itself. It means that our minds don't like not knowing what's coming next. So if you're living in a season where things feel uncertain, it makes sense that your regular routines may have fallen apart. It makes sense that you have a harder time sleeping, or that you might forget to eat the next day until you're shaky and irritable and suddenly realize I could have used a Snickers. That you struggle to focus on a simple task and feel like it somehow is now a full-time job. Because when your mind is busy trying to protect you from everything that might happen, there isn't much energy left for laundry and dinner or emails or trying to figure out where you put your phone. Now, I want to say something that may sound obvious, but someone out there needs to hear it. You can't always build a big, beautiful routine in the middle of a crisis. You may not be able to wake up early and make a perfect breakfast, work out, journal, meditate, take the dog for a long walk, and answer your emails, and still have time to become the person who magically enjoys engaging in origami with fitted sheets. That may not be where you are right now, and that's okay. When life has no rails, the goal isn't to build a whole railway system by tomorrow. The goal is to find one place to stand, one thing you can count on, one small anchor that tells your mind, even if I don't know what's coming next week, I know what I can do right now. It can be simple, like getting out of bed and opening the curtains, or drinking a glass of water before you leave the house. It may not sound like much, but when everything feels unstable, small things can matter a lot, because they remind you that you still have some choice, not control over everything. Remember, we don't have control over everything. We don't control whether somebody gets sick or if something at our job changes. We will never have control over what another person chooses to do. We can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond and act. We may be able to control one small thing next by deciding to follow our routine, if we eat something or not, if we take a shower or step outside for 2 minutes. Before somebody says that's not enough, I know, sometimes it doesn't feel like enough. Sometimes you need more help than a shower or a glass of water or sunshine can give you. Sometimes we need that support. You might need a therapist or a medical doctor if you need medication. You may need to connect with somebody that you trust. There is a huge list of things that we might need: money, housing, food, childcare. I'm not saying routine's going to solve all of that. It doesn't. I'm saying a little structure can sometimes help hold you up while you get the help that you need. It can be that one little part of taking care of yourself when everything else feels like it's moving too fast. Now, the APA, the American Psychological Association, recommends focusing on the things that are within your control during uncertainty and using routines to give days and weeks some comforting structure. That can be as ordinary as a weekly meal planning or laying out clothes before a stressful day. There's another thing that happens when life goes off the rails. We can start withdrawing. I don't mean because we're bad at coping. I mean because when life gets overwhelming, pulling back can feel safer. It often feels safer. We may stop answering messages or cancel plans. We may stop doing the things we used to enjoy or stop taking care of the house. We might stay in bed longer because being awake means having to deal with everything. Sometimes we just need rest. Pulling back can be our body telling us that we've had enough. But if withdrawal becomes the only thing we do, it can make life feel even smaller. We stop getting the small moments of connection, the exercise, the accomplishment that can help remind us that we're still part of the world. That's one reason behavioral activation can be helpful for people dealing with depression. The goal is to take a manageable step forward, something meaningful, because action can sometimes create a little more energy, connection, or hope than staying stuck in withdrawal. I want to be really careful with that. I'm not saying just go for a walk and you'll be fine. If that were all it took, most of us would have solved all of our problems years ago. I'm saying that when life has no rails, it can help you to do one thing that reminds you that you still exist outside of the problem. One thing that connects you to life you want to have, even if you aren't there yet. Let me give you an example. Imagine you lose your job, which I hope you don't. At first, you may have all kinds of things to do: applications, paperwork, phone calls, updating your resume, trying to figure out how to pay the bills, and trying not to panic every time you check your bank account. But after a while, the days can start to blur. You don't have anywhere to be at a certain time. It's okay to start sleeping in later. You may lose track of what day it is. You might start to avoid opening emails because you're afraid there won't be any good news. The longer that goes on, the harder it can be to get moving. So, a viable structure may not be I'm going to treat the job searching like a full time job. That could be too much, especially when you're already anxious and exhausted. A viable structure might be smaller, like getting dressed most mornings, even if you don't feel like it. Trying to spend 30 minutes on one job related task and then take a break. Maybe you could just do one household task before you start scrolling online again. Try calling one person a week, not because they can fix everything, but because isolation has a way of making depression and anxiety louder. That's not solving unemployment and it's not making the uncertainty disappear, but it gives your day a little more shape. It gives you a way to say, I'm still moving, even if I'm only moving slowly. So here's another example. Let's say you're a caregiver for someone that you love. Now, before anybody gets offended, I'm not saying caregivers don't have routines. Some of you have more routine than most people could comfortably survive. You've got medication schedules, appointments, meals, phone calls, insurance paperwork, and a calendar so full it looks like that you're trying to run for public office. But your own rhythm might be gone. Your day may be built entirely around somebody else's needs. You may not know when you're going to get a break. You may only get to eat whenever there's time left over in their schedule, and you might only get to sleep whenever you can. You may put off your own appointments because there's always something more urgent for somebody else. Over time, you can start to feel like you aren't a person with needs anymore. You're just the person who gets things done. So your structure might be the only one small thing that belongs to you. Well, maybe it's 10 minutes outside after an appointment or calling a friend on the drive home. It could be that you're just sitting down and doing some breathing exercises before you start your next task. That's not going to fix the demands of caregiving, but it will remind you that you're important too. When life goes off the rails, structure isn't about becoming more productive. It's about creating a few things that help you stay connected to yourself. A reminder that uncertainty may be part of your life right now, but it doesn't get to decide everything about your day. You can't control the whole journey, but you can still keep your hand at the helm. You can still choose one small action. You can still come back to an anchor point. Look, when life has no rails, that's enough to keep you from feeling completely lost. I want to talk about something that structure can give us that we don't always think about. Self-trust. When people hear the word structure, they usually think about schedules and meal planning or exercise, and they try to remember where they put the keys, all kinds of things. But structure can be way more than just a way to organize your day. It can be a way of building trust with yourself. Now, when I say self-trust, I don't mean believing that you always get everything right. Boy, that'd be nice. But that's not real life. Self-trust isn't saying I'm never going to make a mistake or I'm always going to do the right thing. Self-trust is more simple than that. It's being able to say, when life gets hard, I know I can come back and I can ground myself. It's knowing that you're going to try and take care of yourself and that you can make a choice when everything else feels overwhelming. Knowing that if you get knocked off course, you don't have to stay there forever. You can reset. You can pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and you can try again. And you can make that next decision. And that's going to build self-trust. Structure can help you build it because every time we create a small routine and come back to it, we send ourselves a message. I said I was going to do it, and I did it. Now, perhaps you said you were going to take your medication that day, and you said you were going to unplug from the internet a half an hour before bed. And maybe you told yourself that you were going to look at your calendar before you agreed to take on anything else. None of those things is going to make you a completely different person overnight. But when you follow through, even in the small ways, your mind will notice. You begin to build evidence that you can rely on yourself. I know that can be hard for some people to hear. Some of us have spent a long time not trusting ourselves. And there can be a lot of reasons for this. It could be that you were raised in an environment where other people made all of your decisions for you, or you were told that you didn't know what you needed, or you were constantly criticized or made to feel like you couldn't do anything right. Were you in a relationship where somebody made you question your own memory or your instincts or your ability to just make decisions in general? Over time, this starts to make you think, what's the point? I always screw up, and that hurts self-trust. Self-trust doesn't come from never messing up. It comes from understanding that a mistake doesn't have to become the end of the story. It comes from realizing that you can miss a day, make a wrong choice, and you can still come back from that. You can still recover. You still get to say, well, that happened. What do I do next? Now, that may not sound like a big deal, but for people who have spent years turning every mistake into proof that they're a failure, that is a very big deal. Because when you believe one missed day means you've ruined everything, you've stopped trusting yourself, you start thinking you can't stick with anything or be consistent, that you can't change, then you may stop trying before you really even started. Structure, when it's flexible and realistic, can help you challenge that story. You don't have to do things every day. You just have to do the next thing. That's a big difference. You don't have to clean the whole house. Maybe you just need to wash the dishes in the sink. You don't have to become somebody who loves exercise. You just need to put your shoes on and walk to the mailbox or maybe the end of the block. You don't have to solve every money problem today. Just try opening a bill instead of letting it sit there unopened staring at you from the counter for 3 weeks. These small actions are very important. In fact, small actions is usually where the self-trust begins. Big promises can feel good in the moment, like, I'm going to get my life together. We've all made some version of that promise, usually around 2 a.m. or after eating something we told ourselves that we weren't going to eat. It usually happens when we're exhausted or emotional or convinced that tomorrow we're going to be a brand new person. And then Monday comes. Life is still life. The kids still have to get an assignment that's due today that they somehow forgot. Well, your work is still there. The bills are still there, and shockingly, you're still tired. Suddenly, the big promise feels more impossible. It's not because you lack discipline. It may just be because you made a promise to yourself that was too big to fit in a little space your life actually gives you. A small promise is different. A small promise is going to tell you that tomorrow morning, before I check my phone, I'm going to shower. Or when I get home, I'm going to sit down for 5 minutes before I start worrying about dinner or laundry and everything else. A small promise is something that I can actually do. And every time you follow through on one of these small promises, you build a little more confidence in your ability to take action. Psychologists often call this self-efficacy. It's the belief that you can carry out a specific action needed to reach a goal or handle a situation. It isn't generic confidence or pretending that you can do everything. It's more practical than that. Now, I can take this one step. Greater self-efficacy has been associated with lower stress responses, and people build it in part through mastery experiences, doing manageable things and seeing that they can do them. I want to emphasize this. Self-trust is not built by punishing yourself when you don't follow through. It's built by being honest with yourself. If you set a goal that doesn't work, you don't need to call yourself lazy. You start by asking yourself if that was realistic. If you keep missing your morning routine, maybe the problem isn't that you don't try hard enough. Maybe you're trying to make the morning you do something that the evening you never was prepared for. Like, does the morning you need the evening you to get more sleep? Maybe a routine needs to happen later, or make the goal smaller to be more achievable. Something that pushes you, but maybe not so much of a daunting task. If you're like me, sometimes I have great plans in the evening, but by morning I'm on autopilot trying to get to work, and nothing from last night gets recalled to memory when I meant to do it. This can be helped by writing yourself a note and putting it where you're sure to see it. These things aren't making excuses. They're learning how to work with yourself instead of against yourself. And that's a big part of building self-trust as well. You start to become someone who listens to yourself. You notice what you need. You notice what gets in your way. You overcome, you adapt. And you don't keep yelling at yourself to try harder while ignoring the fact that the plan isn't working. So let me give you an example. Imagine somebody says, I'm going to start exercising every day. Okay, that's a great goal. But then they decide the only way that it counts is if they get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, go to the gym for an hour, sweat like they're training for something, and then come home feeling like they just fought a bear. Well, maybe that works for some people, bully for them. But if this person hates mornings, is already sleep deprived, and works long hours and has never enjoyed going to the gym in the first place, then that routine may not be building self-trust. It may just build another story about failure, which can increase distrust in yourself. Now, they might do it for 3 weeks, maybe 5 if they're really committed, but then they miss a morning and then suddenly the whole plan is over. Instead, what if the promise was smaller? What if the promise was 3 days a week? I'm going to make a 10-minute walk after work. And now we're talking about something that can fit into my real life schedule. And it might not make any fitness influencer want to interview me for their podcast, but it might be something that I actually keep doing. And when you keep doing it, you start to learn that I can take care of myself in this way. Here's another example. Maybe you have a habit of saying yes to things before you've had time to think about it. Somebody asks you to help with something and they just need a favor. Yeah, favor. Somebody wants you to take on another project, and because you're kind and helpful, or possibly just afraid of disappointing people, you say yes. Then later, you become overwhelmed. You're irritated, you're exhausted, you need a Snickers, and you're wondering why nobody seems to respect you and your time. But maybe the structure you need isn't a schedule. Maybe it's a pause. Perhaps your new routine is that you don't answer requests right away. Your auto response could say, let me look at my week and I'll get back to you. That's structure too. It's a boundary you've built into your life, and every time you use it, you're reminding yourself, my time is important. I get to think before I commit, and I'm allowed to make choices that don't overwhelm me. That builds self-trust. It's not always about doing more. Sometimes it's about doing less on purpose. It's about creating a structure that protects your energy instead of spending all of it. So if you're sitting there thinking, I don't trust myself because I've failed so many routines before, I want to consider another possibility. Maybe you haven't failed at structure. Maybe the structures you tried were too rigid. They were built for a version of you that didn't have your responsibilities, your stress, your mental health, your sleep problems, your life. Maybe you were trying to follow somebody else's map. Look at somebody else's map, may be great for them, but if it doesn't fit the territory that you're walking through, it's not going to get you where you need to go. So start smaller. Choose something important to you. Choose something that makes your life a little bit easier and a little calmer, but still productive. Then make it small enough that you can actually do it. And when you miss it, because you're going to miss it sometimes, don't use that moment to attack yourself. Use it to practice coming back. That's the real work. There was a movie that I loved. It had Michael Douglas and Val Kilmer. And in it, Michael Douglas's character tells Val Kilmer's character that everyone gets knocked down. What matters is if you get back up. Now, that's just by memory. It's been a long time since I've seen that movie, so don't judge me if I didn't get it word perfect. But that's the takeaway. It's not about being perfect. It's about coming back. Self-trust is built every time you get back up. Every time you say, that didn't go the way I wanted, but I'm going to jump back up and try again. Every time you say, I don't have to fix everything today, but I can fix something, structure can help you become somebody that you can count on. Everybody struggles and gets tired. Everybody loses their way sometimes. But as we practice getting up, we learn that even when we do, we can come back to the helm and we can get back in control of where we're going. Now, before we get to Anchor, that's an acronym, we're going to want to spend a little time talking about the difference between structure and rigidity. And they can look a lot similar from the outside. Two people can both have a schedule. Two people can both have routines. Two people can both have a list of things that they usually do during the day. But one person feels happy and supported by their structure that they've created, while the other person feels trapped by it. That's a very different outlook. Structure is going to tell us that it's here to help me. Rigidity says, if I don't do it perfectly, I've failed. Structure tells us that this is what I usually do. Rigidity says this is the only way that I'm allowed to do it. Structure with flexibility says I didn't get to it today, so I'll come back tomorrow. Thinking rigidly says I missed it, so I might as well just give up now. Now, a lot of us have had structure become rigid without even realizing it. We start out trying to take care of ourselves. We start by saying, I want to get better sleep. I want more exercise, and I want to keep my house a little more manageable. I want to stop feeling like I'm always behind. But these are good things. But somewhere along the way, the goal can turn into a rule. And when the rule turns into a test, suddenly, instead of structure helping us, structure becomes another measure to which we view ourselves as if we're good enough or not. If I miss a day or two or sleep in too late, if I don't get the workout in, and now we're telling ourselves, see, I can't stick to anything. But that isn't structure that's helping you. That's perfectionism wearing a calendar. Perfectionism is sneaky like that. It can take something helpful and turn it into something heavy. It can convince us that we can't do everything. There's no point in doing anything. If we can't do a full workout, why take a short walk? If we can't clean the whole house, why bother doing the dishes? That kind of thinking can make life harder than it needs to be. Real life doesn't usually give us ideal conditions. Sometimes people we care about get sick. Your car decides it needs a new sound effect, or you get a phone call that changes the tone of your whole day. If your structure only works when everything is going exactly as planned, it isn't really supporting you. It's just waiting for you to fail. A supportive structure has room for adjustment. It's flexible. It's got room for a plan B or an acceptable but maybe not perfect result. That doesn't mean you stop caring, and it doesn't mean you throw out all the routines out the window every time you get tired. It means you learn how to work with the day that you actually have, not the day you wish you had. Psychologists often use the term psychological flexibility to describe the ability to stay connected to what matters to you while adapting your actions to the situation that you're in. It's about being able to say, this isn't what I planned, but I can still choose to do something that's going to support me and my goals. Psychological flexibility is linked to well-being, and research suggests that it plays an important role in how people respond to stress, anxiety, and depression. Now, that's a helpful way to think about structure. Structure gives you a direction. Flexibility helps you to change course when you need to. You need both. Think about it like you're on a boat. You need a destination. You need to know where you're generally headed. You need some supplies. You need some idea of how you're going to get from A to B. But if that wind shifts and you refuse to move the sails because this wasn't the plan, you're not going to have a good day. The plan matters, but being able to adjust matters too. And that's when the structure is useful. It isn't meant to turn you into a robot. It's meant to help keep you moving in the direction that matters to you, even when your day changes. And that brings us to Anchor, Anchor. This is a simple way to think about building structure that supports you instead of controlling you. It's not a perfect system, and it's not a set of rules that you have to follow. It's just a way to help you figure out what kind of structure might actually work for your life. It's an acronym, and it's now acronym time. Anchor, A, assess what's already there. N, name what you need most. C, choose one small anchor. H, hold it loosely. Observe what helps. R, reset without shame. Now let's jump into each of those a little deeper. Access what's already there. The first step is to access what's already there. A lot of people think they have no structure at all. They say, my life is chaos. I don't have a routine. I can't stick to anything. But usually there's already patterns in the day. Maybe you always check your phone when you wake up, or you doom scroll before you do anything else. Maybe you get a little more energy at a certain time of day. Maybe you always crash around 3 p.m. Perhaps you eat dinner around the same time most nights, even if it's cereal standing over the sink. No judgment. The point here isn't to criticize what you're doing. The point is to notice, what does your day already look like? And there are natural starting points. Where are the places where you already have a rhythm, even if it's not the rhythm you want? Because it's easier to build structure into something that already exists than to try and invent a completely new life from scratch. If you already eat breakfast every morning, maybe that becomes your cue to take your meds, to drink more water, or to look at your calendar. If you already get into the car after work, maybe that becomes your cue to take a minute and just breathe before you drive home. You don't need to start with a giant routine. You can start with something that you already do. And name what you need most. The second step is to name what you need most. Not what somebody on the internet says you need. What do you need right now? Do you need sleep? Do you need a little less chaos in the morning? Do you need to stop working all the way up until bedtime? Do you need to move your body in some kind of way that loosens up your joints because you've been sitting in the same chair long enough that the furniture starts to mold itself to you? This step is important because structure works best when it comes from self-care. Not shame, not pressure, definitely not somebody else's idea of normal. You're not trying to become more impressive. You're trying to make your life more manageable. So ask yourself, what's one thing that would make my day feel a little easier or help me feel a little more stable and in control? Start there. Choose one small anchor, not 7 anchors, not the whole new morning routine, evening routine, workout routine, meal plan routine, cleaning plan routine. One simple anchors, such as putting a glass of water beside your bed at night. Make sure you stay hydrated. Or putting tomorrow's clothes out before you go to sleep. Taking your medication with breakfast, or shutting down the computer at the end of your workday. It could be 5 minutes clearing one small area in your home before you go to bed. The important thing is that the anchor is specific. I'm going to take better care of myself is a nice idea, but it's hard to know what to do with that at 7:30 on a Tuesday morning when you're tired and somebody else is already sending 3 emails telling you that they're urgent. A more useful anchor is after I brush my teeth, I'm going to take my meds. That's called an if-then plan. You connect to something you already do with one small action that you want to remember. If this happens, then I do that. And research on implementation intentions, those simple if-then plans finds that linking a specific situation to a specific response can make it easier to turn a goal into action. 8. Hold it loosely. This is the 4th step. If you choose an anchor and then treat it like a rule that you're never going to break, we're right back to rigidity. The anchor is there to help you. It's not there to judge you. And if you miss one day, that doesn't mean you failed. If your schedule gets thrown off, that doesn't mean that the structure was pointless. You don't have to start over from the beginning every time life happens. You can just come back when you can. That's it. No punishment, no dramatic speeches about how you've ruined everything, no throwing the planner into the drawer and declaring that you're not a routine person. Just come back. Get back on that horse. Maybe you plan to take a walk after work, but you had a terribly horrible day and the last thing you want to do is go outside. Okay, maybe the flexible version of that is standing on the porch for 2 minutes or stretching while you wait for dinner to heat up. You still get to choose. You are at the helm. The 5th step is to observe what helps. Sometimes we make routine sound because it sounds good. We think everybody says I should meditate, or everybody says I should wake up early, or everybody says I should meal prep. Well, maybe those things are helpful for some people. But the real question is, does it help you? Does this structure help make your day feel a little less stressful? Does it help you feel more rested? Does it help you make it easier to get something done that matters? Does it help you feel more connected to yourself, or does it mostly make you feel annoyed, pressured, and like you're doing things wrong? Be honest. You're allowed to adjust. You are allowed to decide something is not working. You're allowed to change your mind. A routine is not a contract. You don't have to adhere to it if it's making your life worse. Now, that doesn't mean we give up every time something gets difficult. Some helpful things do take effort. But there's a difference between something being a little uncomfortable because it's new and something being so unrealistic that it's setting you up to fail. Pay attention to the difference. The last step is reset without shame. I promise, life is going to happen to you. You're going to get sick. You're going to have a week where everything is harder. You're going to have holidays and appointments, bad sleep, family stress, unexpected bills, work emergencies, days when you just don't have much left to give. You're going to miss your anchor. That's not a question of if you miss your anchor. It's a question of when. So the real skill isn't to never get off course. The real skill is learning how to come back without turning it into a character judgment. You miss your evening routine? Okay, what can you do tomorrow? You stop walking for a month because life got overwhelming? Okay, what would a 5-minute version look right now? You haven't looked at your planner in 2 weeks? Okay, open it today. Look at one thing. That is a reset. Don't look for glamorous. It's not, and it isn't going to be dramatic, but it is going to be real. And that's how structure becomes something that you can live with. We're not trying to build a perfect system, and I don't want you to become something you aren't. Don't force yourself to follow rules that make you miserable. Instead, try creating small, flexible anchors that support the person you already are and the life you're already living. So as you think about structure, don't ask, how can I finally become disciplined enough to do everything right? Ask yourself, what's one small thing I can put in place that makes my life a little easier and still moves forward? Assess what's already there. Name what you need most. Choose one small anchor. Hold it loosely. Observe what helps. Reset without shame. That is anchor. And that's not there to keep you from being yourself. It's there to help you come back to yourself. Now, as we get ready to wrap this up, I want to come back to something important. Structure isn't about becoming a different person. It isn't about becoming more organized than everybody else. And it's not about waking up some ridiculous hour because somebody on the internet said that was what successful people do. It's definitely not about taking every part of your day and turning it into a test to see if you fail. Structure in your life is about support. It's about giving yourself a few things that you can rely on when life feels unpredictable. It's about making a little room in your day to eat, rest, sleep, breathe, And remember that you are a person with needs. Those needs have a right to be met. They deserve to be met. Life is going to get messy. It's going to get loud. And there will be days when you wake up already behind. And there will be days when the plans fall apart before lunch. And you know what? That doesn't mean you failed. It means you're living a real life. Remember, the goal isn't to create a routine that works only when everything is good and calm, predictable, and going exactly your way. The goal is to create something that helps you come back to yourself when things are not going your way, to help you anchor to a safety point, to help you ground. And that's the difference between structure and rigidity. Structure says, this is here to help me. Rigidity says, if I can't do this perfectly, I'm failing. Just ask yourself, what's the next thing I can do that would make my life a little easier today? Going to bed a little earlier, eating something before I get shaky and irritated, or taking my meds. Maybe just setting out tomorrow's clothes tonight. You don't need to do all the things. You don't need to build a whole new routine tonight. Just pick one thing that gives you a little more sense of stability and control, and then hold it loosely, because there will be days when you don't do it. And there will be days when you forget. The real goal isn't to never get thrown off course. The goal is to learn how to come back without turning it into a character judgment. And that's what anchor is for. Assess what's already there, name what you need most, choose one small anchor, hold it loosely, observe what helps, and reset without shame. Anchor. Don't worry about doing it perfectly. You don't have to do it all at once. You just start by doing one small thing. Self-care won't always look like a big breakthrough. They can be something quiet and simple that remind you that you are in control. They remind you that I'm still here, I still matter, and I am worth taking care of. And I think we all need that reminder once in a while. Now, research on routine and psychological flexibility points in the same direction. Supportive routines can provide stability during stress, but the ability to adjust without abandoning what matters is a part of what makes that structure healthy. So this week, don't try and fix everything. Don't try and make a list of 1,020 things you think you should be doing. Don't decide that you have to become somebody else by tomorrow morning. Just ask yourself, what's one small thing I can do that would help me feel a little more in charge of my own destiny? Then do your best to come back to it. You don't need to expect perfection. Do the small anchors often enough to start building a little bit of trust within yourself. You deserve a life that doesn't feel like you're in survival mode every minute of every day. You deserve routines that support you instead of punish you. You deserve structure that gives you room to breathe. Now, thank you. I appreciate you being here. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope this episode gives you permission to make structure a little smaller, a little kinder, compassionate, a little more realistic. Remember, you don't need a perfect plan. You just need those anchor things. Remember, we want progress, but not at the cost of our sanity. Doing the little anchors might be only a small step, but it's still growth and it's still progress. So until next time, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and remember, you may not be able to control the whole ocean, but you can still drop anchor, steady yourself, and decide what comes next. And for heaven's sake, don't look around and decide to be like everybody else. You be you. Don't be normal. Until next week.